Welcome to the Millionaire Mindcast, where we broadcast weekly interviews with millionaire minds from across the globe to empower you on your journey of unlocking a rich and fulfilling life. It's time to unleash your millionaire within. Now, here's your host, Matty A.
What's going on, guys? Matty A here. Welcome into the Millionaire Mindcast, the show that focuses on all things you know what, mindset, money, and motivation to help you increase your income, impact, and influence. And whatever space it is, whatever industry, whatever game you're playing, that's what we want to empower you to be better and do more at, right? I'm your host, Matty A. As always, it's great to be here with you guys. For all the returning listeners, you know I love you. I got mad love for you. Super appreciate you always coming back, sharing the podcast, right? Because this is the one way that we continue to grow. This is a viral, a word of mouth, a referral-based podcast where people continuously share, an episode that they liked. They comment on, something that was a big takeaway for them, and this is how we get more reach, more eyes and ears on what we're doing. So I just want to share some major gratitude to all the people that are tuning in, whether you're listening on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, YouTube, whatever it is. Very, very honored that you have allowed me and our guests to speak into your life. And whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're an employee, we cover all kinds of inspirational and informative topics that are important for having and creating a healthy, wealthy, legendary life. Whatever that means to you, right? Everything you hear on here isn't always going to resonate. Everything that you learn on here isn't going to be applicable. But being in the conversation, growing into those conversations, getting you thinking bigger, giving you some diversity, some perspective is only going to sharpen the saw, right? Is only going to add more tools to the tool belt. And that's what that's all about, is constantly growing and constantly expanding, being open instead of contracting or doing nothing, right? That's a whole lot better than that. So big shout out to all those that are new, checking out the podcast here today. And I got a treat for you guys, because this is an amazing show with Mr. Chris Ronzio, who I'll tell you about here in 1 second. But as always, we got some free resources for each and every show and episode. So if you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Millionaire Books Resource of the Month. It's the top 50 millionaire recommended reads. It's basically just a list that I've compiled of all the top books recommended by Millionaire Mindcast guests, all books that I've read, all books that I love, endorse, and have made a big, significant impact on me and obviously on our millionaire guests. So with success leaving clues, maybe you might want to check some of those out. All you got to do is text the word Millionaire Books, one word, no spaces, Millionaire Books to 44222. That's Millionaire Books, no spaces, all one word to 44222. All right, so like I said, amazing show today. And this is a topic that I think is often neglected. It's something that is so important. I always talk, when I'm talking to my coaching clients, I'm talking to, people, other businesses, studying, successful, companies that have scaled and have massive impact. I always say, what are some of the most critical things that you have put time and attention and money into that has served you in growing and expanding? And oftentimes, one of the words which is not sexy at all is systems. A lot of people talk about systems and how important systems are, because when you have systems, you have a standard, you have an operating procedure, you have, something that someone else can follow, which creates more of what? Leverage, right? It gives people a framework, a roadmap to follow. And that's how you can start plugging in people and employees and taking some of those things off of your plate. And that's exactly what Chris Ronzio does in his business. But kind of going back, and he shares, a lot of this story in the initial part of the interview. He started his first business when he was 14 years old, building a video production company that sold over $3 million in youth sporting event videos, which I thought was awesome, because we were talking about like VHS back in the day, right? So the tech game has really transformed that space, and he was hustling, doing it back when it was a grind, when we didn't have some of these tools and resources. So that kind of told me a little bit about what kind of guy he was, how resourceful he was, and the value that he put on the systems, which we talk about. But then he decided to sell that business, and he began helping other entrepreneurs who were hitting ceilings, create systems and infrastructure in their business, which he created Organized Chaos with Chris obviously at the helm. And it's a team of entrepreneurs, consultants, investors, and advisors in their respective fields whose mission it is to help simplify businesses so people can grow, right? Oftentimes we just need to get out of our own way and let someone else who has the expertise come in and help us do the things that we obviously either don't want to do because it's not sexy, right? Or maybe that we're not good at, or maybe they're just better at it than us. And Chris is one of those people. So you're going to learn a lot about, how important systems are to business and, where do you start when you're starting to create a business? How do you take inventory of, what the starting line is and how to actually put something together with a system? Some of his biggest success stories with systems and how it's empowered them to have breakthroughs. Talking about, life balance, right? Because he is a very successful guy and he's constantly got people wanting him to come into their cities and, their businesses, which pulls him away from his family. So he talks a lot about life balance, which I think is a very important conversation. You hear all the grind until you die type talks nowadays, and yet it's just not realistic. It's not sustainable. Obviously, those are, seasonal, I think, pieces of advice, depending on where you're at in your life, where you're at in your business. But the life balance conversation or the counter life balance conversation, I think, is extremely important, and it's one that needs to be had. And we had a cool chat around that. And I always like to know a little bit more about fear, right? I think high achievers and performers, of course, they still experience fear. And he shared, what he fears, or when fear shows up, how does he continue to process it and move through it? And that's not even scratching the surface of what we talked about today. So you guys are in for a treat. So with that being said, I don't want to waste any more time. Let me shut my big trap. Let's get into today's show with Chris Ronzio right after these quick messages. One of the biggest mistakes most entrepreneurs and small businesses make, not staying on top of their finances and accounting. Can you relate? Well, thanks to FreshBooks, this part of your business doesn't have to be a thorn in your side any longer. I think we can all agree the working world has changed, and with the growth of the internet and today's new business landscape, more and more people are going into business for themselves, becoming small business owners and entrepreneurs. And FreshBooks is a premier accounting software that will simplify and organize all of these needs for you. FreshBooks and their all-new version of their cloud accounting software has been redesigned from the ground up and custom built for entrepreneurs and business owners just like you and I. It's ridiculously easy to use, and it's also packed with powerful features that make it so you no longer need to be a CPA or a financial guru to stay on top of your numbers. Whether you want to create and send professional-looking invoices in less than 30 seconds, set up online payments to get paid from your clients faster, tracking client invoices and accounting, the list goes on, FreshBooks has your name all over it. And the great thing is they're gracious enough to offer a 30-day unrestricted free trial to all my listeners. So go ahead and claim it. Just go to freshbooks.com/Mindcast and enter Millionaire Mindcast in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Have you been wanting to get a mentor but don't know where to start or how to find one? Then come check out the Millionaire Mentors Mastermind. 5 years ago, I was in the exact same boat. I wanted to take my life and my business to that next level, but the challenge was I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to be able to do that. Then one day, someone started telling me that if I wanted to accelerate my success, I needed to get a mentor. Well, fast forward to today, I've had many world-class mentors who have played a major role in my success and development over the years. Not only did my mentors help me hit my goals faster, they shared resources with me that I didn't have access to at the time. They helped me avoid the mistakes I most likely would have made without their guidance. They allowed me to tap into their network and build relationships with people that would have most likely taken years to develop. But most importantly, they inspired me to think bigger, get clearer, and held me accountable to taking action. Like Jim Rohn said, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you want to become a millionaire, then start surrounding yourself with other millionaires, right? If you want to have a successful business, surround yourself with other successful business owners that you can learn from. Whatever it is that you desire out of life, surrounding yourself with the right network of people who have the resources and experience that you lack at that time will be critical to your success. But here's the challenge. Most people don't know where to find a mentor or how to even gain access to them. Well, with the Millionaire Mentors Mastermind, that's no longer a challenge you have to worry about. Learn more at www.millionairementorsmastermind.com or text the word millionaire millionaire to 44222. That's millionairementorsmastermind.com, or text the word millionaire to 44222. Now back to the show. Well, I'm excited to welcome into the show Chris Ronzio. What's going down, brother?
What's up? Happy to be here. Thanks, Matt.
So you and I were able to connect through a previous guest and badass of the show, Mr. Mark Lack. And he sent an email over to me and was like, hey, there's this dude and he's got a really great business and he's had some amazing success. I think he'd be an awesome fit for your show. And I get a lot of people that are like, hey, I got this dude or this gal that should be on your show. But anybody that comes over from Mark, I know is vetted. And so I'm really excited for our community and our audience to get a little taste of what it is that you do today, being that this is, with how crazy life is and with, all of the distractions, all of the responsibilities that we have as just individuals in general, let alone if you're running a business or you're an entrepreneur, it can often feel like we mistake movement for achievement, where we're really damn busy, but then we're wondering where the results are going, right? Where are they coming from? And so I know this is your lane, but before we dive into that, I want to give people a little bit of a backdrop for those that don't know who you are. Who is Chris Ronzio? What do you do? Where are you from? Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So my story, I guess, started in Boston, where I grew up. I live in Scottsdale, Arizona now, but back when I was in Boston, I was in high school and I had a video production company that I started with a friend. I wanted to be like Ahmad Rashad, like a sportscaster or whatever.
Nice.
So I started taking a camera from our community access station and going around to our high school games and talent shows and just filming everything we could film. So one day we were filming the cheerleaders, because why wouldn't we do that? And the people who were putting on this big tournament said, hey, you guys with the cameras, could you film this tournament we're having, the state championship this weekend? And if you tape it and give us a copy for our archives, you can sell copies to all the parents that come. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So you've probably seen, the old school video guy in the back of an auditorium with a huge camera or whatever. And that's what I was as like a high school kid. So my friend and I, we would go to these auditoriums and we would shoot these big things. And by the end of that one day cheerleading event, I had like $900 in cash from selling VHS tapes that I spread out all over my bed. And I was like, I've made it. This is it. And that's really how it all started. So what started as just an interest in video turned into a business around doing live youth sporting events. And it was called EVC, Event Video Company. So through high school and college, that business just kept growing. We did events up and down the East Coast, then all over the country. That's what got me out to Arizona. And by the time it was done, we had done, the halftime show, the Pro Bowl for 4 years. We did the U.S. figure skating all the way up to the Olympic coverage. We were their official sponsor. We did Pop Warner football, USA swimming, big baseball championships. And it was a really cool business to grow up in for sure. So that taught me a few things. It taught me first, how to work remotely. We had 300 camera operators all around the country and, pulling off thousands of events and just how to logistically make that happen. And it also taught me a ton about tech, because if you think about video from 2001 to 2013, when I was running that company,
big change.
It started as like me with 10 VCRs linked up to each other and like record. And by the end, it was live streaming and on demand and USB sticks. And so just constant change.
You might be one of the first guests of the show who had a business blow up from filming cheerleaders.
That's great. That's my claim to fame.
That's my claim to fame. Right on, man. Well, I think this is such a fitting topic, because I think it's something that so many people struggle with. One is a lack of scale, or a struggle to scale due to an absence of systems. And, logistics systems, it's not a sexy word. Like most entrepreneurs, we're so fast paced and constantly trying to do a million different things that we're more worried about what's going on in front of us than behind us. In order for what's going to happen, behind us to be actually taken care of in a very strategic and efficient and productive way, there's got to be systems in place, right?
Totally. And systems were such a huge part of my video business. So you'd think, as a video company, all you care about is cameras and editing and video. And that's what my first year was all about, was learning like the art of video. But once you figured it out, once you've shot a video and you learn how to make money doing whatever the thing you're doing is, then it's all about systems from there. And so that became my whole focus for the rest of the time I had that company.
So I want to unpack that a little bit, because I think that's often a conversation that's just lacking, being that, it's like I said, it's not the most exciting thing. And yet it's probably one of, in my opinion, most imperative areas of any business to build out that infrastructure through systems. So like what we had just talked about a few minutes ago was, unless you're going to be the one wearing the hat and doing everything for the rest of your life, which you as an individual are not scalable, you only have 24 hours in a day, you're going to have to be able to bring team members on. You're going to have to bring employees members on. You're going to have systems that you can integrate them into and have them follow and empower them to, do what you were doing and hopefully do it better. So let's go back to the beginning of, when did you realize you needed to start building systems in order to scale your company? And where did you start with that? What did that look like?
So for me, like I said, I started the business in high school. And when I grew up doing it, I was, initially it was like, you do everything. You're the camera guy, you're the editor, you're the business person, you're the salesperson. So early on, I had this division with my partner where he was much more the technical guy. So he became the video and the editor, and I became the business side, doing the sales, doing our contracts, doing all the setup, doing the customer service. And so that was like the first division of role, of responsibility. But like a lot of the companies I talk to, they always say I'm wearing 100 hats or whatever, but they haven't taken the time to figure out what those hats are. And it's really important that you actually spend the time to figure out what are the 40 positions in your company, even if you're 38 of them, like what are those roles? So that was kind of the first step. And then the next big jump off was, I ended up buying that partner out. He being the video guy, got a job with NBC and moved on. So I bought him out. And when I went to college, that was really the wake up moment where, I had tests and classes and things I had to do. And I said, man, I got to figure this out. Like, someone else needs to actually do the work. And so at that time it was just Craigslist, finding camera operators and editors on Craigslist. And I started meeting people in Boston that were at some of the art schools. And I had this little 3-ring binder of like my sheets of every team member's profile. And it was like a photo of them and like their favorite like vacations they've ever taken. And that's kind of what started the team, was like my Craigslist roster.
That's awesome. I can just picture you having this big, thick 3-ring binder flipping through. Now it's like everything's digital, right? And we're not even that old. So it's funny that, we're talking like this is so far back in the day, but it also shows you just how rapidly things change in the business landscape and how imperative it is that you continue to be proactive in how you optimize your business model as well. So what you recapping a little bit, you took inventory of, all right, what systems do I need to create? What was your process of actually, because I always get this question from people, and I have an opinion and approach, at least of how we create systems in our company, but I'm always intrigued by how do you dive into the X's and O's of going, all right, here's my, let's just say, intake system for a new client acquisition. Where do you start with going, how do I create this system? Where do I store it? What are the details of the tasks? Am I video recording something to show them how to do it? Or what did that look like for you?
I think for a lot of people, creating a system or documenting their system is daunting because they haven't totally figured it out yet. If you know your system and you know the job that you're doing over and over, it becomes second nature to write it down and show it to someone. So I compare it to like a highway versus a path through the woods. Like when you're first starting in business, any process is like a path through the woods. Like first it's uncharted territory, and then it's a footpath, and then it's like it's kind of gravelish, and you can see where to go. But you don't just pave a highway with no like, well, let's put a highway here. No, you put a highway like because there was an efficient route that had been traveled over time. So I think of it, I think that's a good analogy where in your business, you have to figure out, you have to just test like the foot traffic. You've got to do things. And then once you're doing things so consistently that you're like, oh, this just feels like a job, then you can write it down.
That's a great way of putting it. And metaphorically, I think it's easy to kind of wrap your head around that. So once you kind of get the system in place, and one of the ways that we do it is same kind of thing, right? Is what do you do? Document what you do. And, we talk about actually every single day going back and looking at the exact steps that you were doing it, writing it down. And I don't know what your approach is, but I know that oftentimes it takes, 3, 4, 5 times to go through the rough draft of the system and optimize it to where it's kind of the highest and best practice or the standard of what the operating procedure is going to look like moving forward. How many times do you recommend somebody go back through a system until they feel comfortable, delegating it off to somebody else?
You never stop doing it. I don't think you can possibly perfect the system. If I had figured out my system for duplicating VHS tapes and then said, yep, that one's good. That would have been just, it wouldn't have lasted a time. So, you think about you ever seen Undercover Boss? That show?
I have. Yep.
Even those guys, CEOs of these billion-dollar companies, they're still going back to the ground floor to understand their systems and reevaluate.
So true.
Last year I had my company before I sold it. I was still going out a couple times a year and being the camera operator, because actually putting yourself in the shoes of all the positions in your company gives you a firsthand experience of why do we do it like this? We need to be changing. I think it's really important to constantly evaluate. So you're not going to do it all the time. You're going to do it less and less frequently as the system becomes more and more mature and you're more confident in it. But up front, you're testing it nonstop. It's like a draft of a paper for school where you're just, you write an outline and it's pretty good. And then you fill in the sections and then someone proofreads it. And then you write a little more and then your teacher corrects it. And then you write a little more and now you've got something,
Right.
It's something that you iterate a lot at the beginning and then less and less frequently.
That's a great point. And I think, I've had seasons in my business where I'm like, oh no, you know what? I've leveraged myself out of that. I don't need to roll my sleeves back up and get back in there. But you bring up a really great point of checking the ego at the door, I think, as an entrepreneur and as a business owner, and doing what's most important for the growth of your company, which is sometimes requiring you to get back in, the trenches and figure out ways to optimize whatever it is that you're looking to improve in, or at least if you're completely removed, having and empowering somebody in that role that can go and do that as well. Is that what you're saying?
Totally. And I have a lot of friends that have businesses, and we'll get into the consulting stuff later. But when I go into someone else's business, it's so easy to see, the forest when you're outside of the trees or whatever, like they say. But so you can do the same thing in your own business. As you distance yourself from a role in the company, you become an outsider that has amazing perspective on that role when you dive back in. Whereas if you're just doing the job all day, you're not going to have those insights. So I think that's really how you can make a company mature, is by, figuring something out, at least at a basic level, delegating it, and then backing away and revisiting it more as an outsider.
What do you say to that, that person that goes, I'm just not a systems person. It's not my personality to, get in there and document these things. I'm not a detail-oriented person. What's because you consult with a lot of people, which we're going to talk about that in a minute, but what do you say to that individual or business owner that says that's just not my strength? That's not what I do.
I don't think everybody has to be detail oriented. They don't have to be the one in the weeds documenting every single step, but everyone at some level has to be a systems person, because you need to understand the bullet points of how the system works. It's like when people say, I'm not a salesperson, or I'm not a marketer, I'm not a people person. You have to be all of those as a business owner to some degree. You've got to have a relationship with people. You've got to have a basic delivery system and understand, otherwise your product probably doesn't produce any value and you don't understand the business. You at some level are an operations person, even if it doesn't mean you're going to be the one that spends 6 months writing out the manual. You can create the outline.
Yeah. And now, so speaking of outlines, obviously you've had some amazing businesses you've built up, some successful exits, and, modeling after others' success is something I think any intelligent entrepreneur does and sees value in. And now, because of, the outlines and the systems and the infrastructure you put in place in your own companies, and that becoming kind of one of your superpowers, now you're doing it for other people. So what does that business look like?
Yeah, so a few years ago when I sold out of the video company, I was kind of floating and I was in this zone where, trying to figure out what's next. And I had all these other entrepreneur friends in this business group and mastermind thing I'm in. And they said, well, why don't, if you've got some time, why don't you help me with my company? Because at the time I was in Arizona, in Scottsdale where I am. And I didn't have an office here. I didn't have employees here, but I've got people all over the country doing things. And as somebody that's stuck in their office, that was kind of a exciting proposition. So they said, I kind of time shared myself across a handful of businesses. And it was really awesome to get that exposure to different industries and realize that, business and business fundamentals go across all industries. And, maybe I didn't, I thought I'm just the video guy. Like I understand technology and websites, but I'm never going to understand like commercial printing, or I'm never going to understand retail, or I'm never going to understand, the medicine. And all of a sudden I was able to provide value in those industries. And I said, wow, this is, this process stuff is universal. And so I remember sitting in a conference, and it was Vern Harnish was a speaker. He's like Rockefeller Habits, Gazelles. And he said, think about what you do and try to see if you can own one or two words. And so I looked back at all the businesses I'd worked with, which was a few dozen at the time. And I said, okay, what am I doing across every company? Every small business has chaos. They just have tons of chaos. And if you don't have chaos in your business, you're doing something wrong, because that's a good thing.
Yeah, you're stretching yourself.
Yeah, it's opportunity. It's stuff's coming at you. That's a good thing in business. It's just how you deal with the chaos. And so I had this tagline that was organize chaos and get things done. And so organize chaos became the name of my my consulting firm. And so
love it.
So for the last few years, that's what we've done. We have a really cool team that has gone into a bunch of small businesses and just overhauled their operations and said, if we just knock this Frankenstein house down, how would we rebuild this thing? And it's been really fun. So like 130 companies so far.
Dude, that's unreal. And I want to take advantage of, being that your time is highly sought after by many successful organizations. We're fortunate enough to kind of, pick, your brain a little bit today. So what are some of for the small business owners, let's start with, what are some of, as you go into a new company, what are some of the most common themes or struggles that you see most businesses or small entrepreneurs, challenged by or struggling with?
So I'll go through our basic model of how we work with every company, and that'll help,
awesome.
I think, put a structure around this. So we talk about the 3 C's, which are context, chaos, clarity. So the first one, context. If a business owner doesn't have the vision of where they're headed, you're not going to get there. If you don't have a map, you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. So that's the one
right.
probably the most people talk about. So I won't spend a lot of time on that, but that's the first thing. We work with companies that, one entrepreneur wants to own an island and another entrepreneur wants to be able to take his kids to school. And that's like a very different context of how you're going to build your organization.
Right.
Do you want 10 employees? Do you want 1,000 employees? Do you want 100 locations? Do you want 1 location? Do you want a job in the business, or do you want to sell it in 12 months? Those are the kind of contextual things that we try to answer up front, because it sets the stage for anything we could possibly do. So context is always first. Next is chaos. So chaos, there's an awesome book, Getting Things Done by David Allen, foundational organization book. And one of the best principles in that is that if you want to really organize something, you've got to get it all out in front of you where you can see it first. So it's kind of like if you were to, clean out your garage or a closet or something, you've got to take everything out and lay it out on the floor in front of you, literally speaking, to say, wow, where did that come from? I forgot I had that. Or why do I have 3 of these? Or why is this like half used and I've got a full one over here? And those same things exist in our businesses. So we go through this process with companies where we're unpacking everything and taking inventory of everything. It's harvesting all the ideas that you have as an entrepreneur that just pop into your head when you're driving and you're like, oh, I'll get around to that someday. Yeah. Or all the issues that you deal with employees, with customers. What's the stuff that just keeps coming up? And then the inefficiencies, or where are the bottlenecks in the company? What things take too much time? So we go through this real exhaustive process, but it's something that any business owner can do on their own by asking themselves those kind of questions. So once you've inventoried everything in the business, then clarity is the last step. And that's about just putting an order of priority. In the book, The One Thing, they say, what's the one thing you can do that is going to make everything else easier? It's like the domino effect.
Yep.
And so that's what we're looking for in a small business is what's all the low hanging fruit that you can knock off and achieve in a couple months to give yourself this sense of clarity and freedom and focus to be able to go after the big things.
It's brilliant. And it's simple enough to where someone could do this in their business today if they wanted to. And I can totally relate to, that good old closet analogy of just pulling things out and you're like, oh, I forgot I had that. Or, I had this idea or I wanted to do this thing or whatever it may be. Getting that clarity on that and taking inventory allows you to reorganize and reprioritize accordingly so you can take intentional action moving forward. So what are some of the, greatest success stories that you've seen? And it may be one particular thing that individual or that company did that empowered them to have the breakthrough. Is there something that, I don't ever think there's that magic pill, but I'm sure you see some themes along the individuals who really kind of break through that next tier and get beyond the chaos.
Yeah. So for every company and where they're at, there's different types of success stories. So for, one company, it might be just getting the courage to make the big hire that they didn't think they can afford and that person propels them forward. For another company, one thing we started doing a lot of or recommending a lot of is actually custom software development, which, just like in the video industry, it went from VCRs and like NASA level equipment to your iPhone. It's the same thing with web development. And people today, you hear web development and you think these big VC funded companies that are pouring money into software. It's amazing what you can get done for 20 or 30 bucks an hour if you find a great outsourced person to be part of your team. And you can build an application that is proprietary and runs your business. And so that's something that more and more we're starting to see and do with companies. One huge success story, a company that I actually have a small piece in, but they're doing really well, is a company called Design Pickle. You might have seen
I've seen their ads all over.
Yeah. So Design Pickle, it's little almost 3 years old, and they've blown up to thousands of customers paying hundreds of dollars a month on this recurring revenue service. But they're offering an unlimited graphic design service. And so talk about a systems, a delivery challenge. It's the systems of how do you find and recruit and train good people?
Yeah.
And then how do you serve customers and get them onboarded into your process? And then how do you deliver whatever it is that you're doing, in their case, graphic design? So we worked with them to design a whole tool that processes every design request that goes through that business. And it's been like, over 100,000 designs delivered in a couple years on that tool. So
amazing.
A lot of varying degrees of success stories.
You brought something up a little bit earlier that I kind of wanted to circle back to, because I think it's so important, especially in the digital age that we're at, or whether it's still a brick and mortar business, just the importance of understanding how to manage a team. And in particular, you obviously had a skill set to be able to scale to the level that your production company was at by managing a remote team. So, and I think a lot of that is a reflection of the leader, the person in the driver's seat. And I'm curious whether it's your own experience or another individual that or company that you've consulted with on some of the skill sets or disciplines or habits that you've seen serve that individual in managing and running a remote team.
Yeah, so I think with remote teams, the challenge is really expectations. And when we talked early on about getting real clarity on all the hats you're wearing and what a particular role is. And when you can outline a role and the expectations of that role with such clarity that you know exactly how you're going to measure that person's performance, you know exactly what you're going to pay them, you know what the pay scale increases look like as they achieve other milestones in the company, you know what hours you expect of them, what procedures that they have to follow, then when you're that crystal clear on a role, it really doesn't matter where the person is. Even my team locally in Scottsdale is mostly remote. We have an office. I'm sitting in our office, but it's more just for meetings when we want to get together and brainstorm.
Right.
Because everybody knows what they're responsible for. And if they're not getting it done, it's pretty transparent as a leader to see that. So, all the companies I've worked with have had some element of people and roles and responsibilities. And there's this great tool called a responsibility matrix, which is, it's as simple as it sounds. It's a spreadsheet that's got every task or role in the company is a row, and then every person in the company is a column. And you go through and say, who owns every task? And you put an X in that cell. And then you just sort by the X's. And it's like a real simple sheet that you can share around your company to know who does what.
Yeah, no gray area there, right? Pretty clear on who's taking ownership of what.
Exactly.
Yeah, and whether that's in-house or remote, I mean, that's a really cool tool that I think any individual, I might need to use that in my own house between me and my wife.
There you go. Who's doing which chores? I pulled into my garage the other night, and my wife had put 2 signs like on the wall where I pull in, like, Wednesday is recycling day, and is it Friday? It's trash day, because I always forget to take the things out. So now I've got this crystal clear reminder, and that's what your employees need.
That's awesome. That brings up a kind of a cool segue, I think, into, we talk about this organized chaos within the business space, but as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, I mean, really, they go hand in hand, like personal life and professional life. So how do you, being such a high performer, manage your life balance in, the professional and the personal setting?
I think life balance is something that people set themselves up for failure if they think that they're going to always be in balance, because on a day-to-day, there's no way that you can possibly be in balance. So you put this many hours towards this and this many hours towards that, because sometimes you're just really revved up about whatever it is that you're doing, and you need to work for 48 hours straight or whatever. Like, I've actually started businesses where a friend and I booked a hotel room and just worked through the night, so we were just totally focused on building whatever it was that we were building. And so I think you go through seasons where like my family and I, we have a 3-year-old, and my wife, we've been married for 7-8 years. And we went to Vancouver in Canada for 6 weeks this summer. And that was very much family time, where I was working like a few hours a day and checking email, but then we were going on awesome drives, and it was much more heavily weighted on the family time. But then now this fall, Q4 is always really busy for us. And so my family knows that and expects that. So it's all about just the communication on what to expect, because you want to be able to take advantage of opportunities, but you can't constantly be withdrawing from the family, goodwill fund. You've got to at least seasonally or whatever, make time out to go heavy on that end.
Yeah. What are some of the things you do as an individual in regards to habits or disciplines that you've seen empower you, over the course of your entrepreneurial journey to continue to just keep excelling, either, in business or in both professional and personal?
Well, I'll start on the personal side. So a huge habit is my wife and I always do weekly date night.
Nice.
So it's a simple key thing. But it's on my Google Calendar every week, so it's an appointment, just like my meeting with my team on Mondays. It's a non-negotiable appointment, because it's on my calendar. I show up, and so it's there. Same with I talked about vacations and travel. We've always traveled since before we were married, and just booking the tickets, it's just such a simple thing, but in a couple minutes, you can go on Southwest or something and just book a ticket a few weeks out or a month out. And when it's on the calendar, you plan your life around that. If on a day-to-day basis or even a week-to-week basis, your calendar will get filled. But if you can look out a few months and make those commitments to your family or to yourself, whether it's booking time for massages or gym time or whatever you need to do, I think that's a really important habit that I've built over the years and been able to stick to.
Scheduling, one of my early on mentors, she always said, if it's not in your calendar, it doesn't exist. And I know for me speaking, being pulled in so many different directions, if it's not on my calendar, I'm most likely not going to remember it and or do it.
Yeah. And well, so since we're talking about that, I do want to make the distinction though, that I think stuff on your calendar and tasks are different things. And when I work with companies and they put tasks on their calendar, that to me is a huge red flag, because the day can go by and the task doesn't get done, and then things are slipping through the cracks.
Yeah.
So everyone I think needs their calendar is for meetings, phone calls, stuff that has to happen and that you can't skip. And your task list or your project management system, however you manage your tasks, that's for the stuff you want to get done. You put a date on it, but if it doesn't get done, it's still on the list, so you don't lose it.
So we, in our company, we use Asana. Any recommended platforms or softwares or services that you've seen be very productive or efficient in that capacity?
Oh, a million. I mean, for task and time management and everything, Todoist is my favorite task management system, and Teamwork is my favorite project management system. The distinction between those, and Asana's gotten great the last few years, especially added a lot of features, but I like Todoist as just a personal thing to dump stuff because whether it's personal or business or whatever, anything that I feel I have to get done today or this week, I can dump it on there. And it's a place where I know I'll process everything out of later. And if it's a project item, it'll get moved to my project management system. Sometimes it's just a reminder for me to call someone back or whatever. So I see them as kind of two different systems. Part of how Organized Chaos started was that there's just hundreds and hundreds or thousands of these web tools available, and people can get kind of overloaded with it. They're subscribed to 100 different tools, and what do I use for what? So we created this thing called the Simple Six on our website that is of all the companies we've worked with, the 6 departments of a business, and what are some of the highlights, like a dozen different tools. So that's a good resource. Awesome.
And we'll be sure to link that up in the show notes for anybody that's listening to this and wanting to know, where they can get that information. Cool. So it's always interesting to me to kind of unpack the psychology of, high performers, being that financially you've done extremely well. And most people often put someone on a pedestal just because of their financial accolades. And yet we often forget that we're all still humans at the end of the day, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, is there anything, as you've faced these new milestones of breaking through ceilings, I'm sure you experienced fear during those times. So when fear shows up for you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, how do you process it and move through it?
I think you have to be proactive about recognizing the fear and being excited. Just the same way you'd recognize chaos in your business as a good thing, recognizing fear is a good thing. So I'll mention 2 exercises that I do every year that have been immensely valuable to me. So the first is a planning exercise that came out of the book, Living Your Best Year Ever by Darren Hardy. I do this exercise with my wife every year where we look back at the last 12 months and we evaluate, what was good, what was bad, all the different areas of our life. And then we make these massive goals for the next 12 months. And without fail, doing this 5 years or something now, every year we look back and it's like, I can't believe we accomplished all that stuff.
Right.
But if you don't like draw a line in the sand, that's uncomfortable. You're never going to get there. So like, that's the first step, I think, is really casting that vision ahead. So then financially, the next piece is an exercise I found called the largest check. And it's a strategic coach thing. Dan Sullivan came up with it. And this one was huge for me, especially with the consulting business. But if you have somebody that pays you money for something, if you have a customer, a client that pays you money, add up over the course of the year the amount that every individual client pays you, and put it in a list and sort it from top to bottom. So if you've got, your biggest client pays you 50 grand a year and your smallest client pays you $500 a year, stack those top to bottom. And then you take the average of the top 5. So that helps get rid of any of the outliers. And what that average of the top 5 is it shows you your personal comfort level with what you're charging. And so if the average of your top 5 deals kind of gives you this barometer for how comfortable you are charging money for some service. And again, you extrapolate that forward by saying, all right, for next year, for the following year, what's going to be my largest check, the average of my top 5? What's that look like for me? And then what's my dream check? Like if I really had to stretch and say, I'm going to get one deal that my number 1 is going to be like this, what does that look like? And same thing, I look back every year and I'm just astounded at how I hit those numbers. But it starts with saying, what's the new big number and then you go a little deeper and you say, well, how am I going to get there? What are the couple things I have to do to get there? I might have to increase my prices, or I might have to come up with a new service, or I might have to do that. And then those things in your subconscious over the course of a year just start to work themselves out. And it's been a massively valuable exercise.
It's brilliant. I love it. And it gets you kind of intimate in that space with obviously getting uncomfortable and stretching yourself, but it also gives you permission to forecast and see things, and maybe a little bit of a different light or paradigm to where you can, take that next step up while still, acknowledging that the fear might be there,
Yeah, for sure.
As you continue to grow yourself, how are you putting yourself in a position to expand? And whether that's through knowledge, personal development conferences, books, whatever it may be, how do you continue to challenge yourself to grow?
So a couple things. First, all the stuff I'm involved with. I mentioned masterminds, and I'm involved with EO, Entrepreneur Organization, which is amazing. And Mark, who you mentioned, events, conferences, things like that. I think making the commitment to go to those things, and again, carve time out on your calendar. You commit with dollars and with time, because if you're actually spending money that maybe even money you're uncomfortable spending, you know that you're going to get a return off that money. Like that is not going to be wasted money. So anyone I've talked to who, whether they're investing $500 on joining some local group or $50,000 on some year-long program, everyone is pushing themselves to go forward. And if something doesn't work for you, none of those programs want to screw you over. If something doesn't work and you really feel like you got burned, then, most will probably give you a refund. But if you, if you're really investing in yourself, then that's one important thing. And that's something I do a lot of. I'm a part of this other group, Warrior. You might have seen, like Warrior Week and Warrior Con, really awesome events. So that's one way I'm investing in myself and pushing myself to grow. The next is kind of a shift to a business model, actually. So my vision with Organized Chaos has been to liberate 25,000 entrepreneurs from their day-to-days. And owning a business is not, you didn't start a business because you want to punch a clock. You started a business because you want to make an impact and you want to do something. And for all the companies I've worked with one-on-one, the only way to free yourself up to tackle those big problems is to have a business that doesn't require you to be punching a clock doing one of the jobs. That's why Organized Chaos started, was to help build systems and processes to enable that. So the next phase for us and for me is actually this product that we built, which is a platform where you can document all your systems and processes and have like the Bible of your business and how it runs, so that if as the owner, you're not there, someone else can run it.
Brilliant. I think that is a much needed tool for any business, or really just any individual in general, is to have kind of your playbook or your manual, whatever you want to call it, in one place in an organized fashion, and have a framework that, empowers you to do it in an efficient way. I'm excited to check that out. When's that coming available?
So it actually already exists. It's just been an internal tool that we've had for Organized Chaos for the last 3 years, and now we're opening it to the world. So the new version should be live in the next few weeks, or maybe early December.
Right on, man. Talk about Christmas coming early, right?
Yeah. So it's like, it's a place. It's funny because I've worked with, like I said, so many different companies and different industries, but the one constant is everyone says, when you say, where are all your systems and processes, most of them point to their head. It's like,
right. And that's a scary place to be, right?
Yeah. Because your head could not wake up one day. So whether, like we talked about early on, whether you're just making checklists or outlines or something, like you've got to start to make steps towards digitally documenting your business, so that you can enable other people to do it, to make the same impact.
So kind of final segment of the show, I always like to kind of get a better idea of, as you continue to grow your wealth and, kind of expand your reach and your legacy, what are, some of the vehicles or places that you're looking to grow your wealth and your impact?
So my whole wheelhouse is small business. I mean, this is what I love. Under a few hundred employees, making a massive impact locally, the directly changing people's lives, inspiring people. This is what I love. So, with my original business was about creating that for myself. And then through the consulting business, it's about helping hundreds of others create that for themselves. Along the way, I've taken equity in 8 of those companies. So, I'm a part owner in a lot of these small businesses. And then with Trainual, the new software product, think training manual, Trainual, that's about making that same impact in thousands of other businesses. So as I grow that as a platform and a community, I'm going to continue to be a small business investor, angel investor, and put my money where my mouth is to help small businesses make an impact.
It's brilliant, brother. Killing 2 birds with 1 stone too, which is, an amazing vehicle in business to continue growing your wealth while having the impact that you're obviously making. So I commend you for that. Final question for you is, everybody's got a different definition of wealth. And I'd love to know, what's your definition of wealth?
My definition is the time, flexibility, and resources to be able to tackle the biggest problems that you want to tackle. I think, a lot of us think down the road and you say, I don't have time to build robots or go to space or do, you hear about these awesome industries and you're like, yeah, I'll do that once, whatever, once XYZ. And I think that true wealth is the freedom, the flexibility, and the resources to be able to tackle those things and not have to worry about your day-to-day or month-to-month.
That's awesome, Chris. Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit more in the interview. Obviously, some amazing notes for anybody that's listening. I know I got a full page of them, and I'm sure we could, spend a couple more hours diving into this kind of stuff. I have a feeling you could probably talk about this stuff all day. You might be a little bit passionate about it, right?
A little bit.
Well, for those that want to follow you, check out your product, your brand, your company. What's the best place for them to do that?
So easiest thing is chrisronzio.com, RONZIO, or Trainual, trainual.com. And then our consulting brand is Organize Chaos. No D, because it's not organized until we get there.
Oh, what a tagline. Well, that's a great way to wrap this interview up. Chris, it's been a pleasure, man. Wish you all the success moving forward, and I'll look forward to, continuing to follow your journey, man. Cheers.
All right. Thanks again, Matt.
All right. Well, that does it for today's show with the man, Chris Ronzio. Love that dude, man. He got me fired up, and just really like what he stands for, how he goes about living life, the focuses and his mentality, and just very cool, calm, and collected, but very purposeful, which obviously, displays why he is so successful. And I think those are things that, we can take away. But I don't know about you, but for me, with systems not necessarily being as sexy as some of the other things entrepreneurship and business ownership entails, it reaffirmed why it is so important, right? And so oftentimes we have to do the things that we just don't want to do. And whether it's you, whether it's somebody else, systems are something that you absolutely have to have in your business if you want to scale. If you want to create more income, if you want to create more impact and influence within your company, outside of your company, with your customers or in your community, whatever it may be, systems are one of those tools that you just have to have in place. So good entrepreneurial conversation. If you guys enjoyed this episode, be sure to share it with somebody, or leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. Share one of your takeaways, something that you want Chris to know. All those trolls out there, if you ain't got nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. But with that being said, all the links, all the resources mentioned in the show will be in the show notes or on the website. So feel free to check that out. Make sure you know those are available to you. And if you haven't done so already, don't forget to join the free Millionaire in the Making Facebook group. We got entrepreneurs, business owners, and really just people of all walks of life from all over the world who are striving for more, who are marching towards that millionaire status, who are looking to create, their definition of a wealthy, healthy, legendary life. And being that we don't get to have spaces in our day-to-day life oftentimes to have these kind of conversations, it's very, very important to integrate or, infuse yourself into the environments, the communities, and the places that are having it, right? We grow into the conversations around us, and we would love you to be a part of our conversation. If you want more business checklists, tools, free resources, be sure to check out Aitchison.com or MillionaireMindcast.com. They, connect somewhere, direct one way or another to the site. And also, if you're, looking for more content, you're looking for more videos, tutorials, interviews, and you're not checking us out on YouTube, be sure to, look up Matt Aitchison, the YouTube channel, subscribe there. We are releasing weekly content on, investing, motivation, mindset. Like I said, anything and everything that will empower you to pick and pull some of the things that we believe are, key ingredients for living that life by design. So with that being said, I think that's all we got. I think that wraps up this interview of Millionaire Mindcast. Got a really exciting guest coming up for you guys next week. It's going to be a powerhouse, and I want to give too much information. But with that being said, keep investing in yourself, keep investing in your wealth on your march to $1 million and beyond. Cheers, my friends.